So while we're on, we're live. Episode 9 of Creative Flux. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. 9, damn, almost in double figures.
Almost in double digits. That's crazy. I remember when we first started JellyPod, there was this interesting stat that I loved. It was that 90% of podcasters never get past episode 3, and 99 never get past episode 20. So we got past episode 3. We're on our way to episode 20.
Yes, we're definitely going to be in the 1%. Yeah.
Definitely going to be in the 1%.
Commitment.
Yeah. Welcome to Creative Flux. I'm Pierson Marks. This is my co-host Bilal, and we just talk about everything that happened this week in generative media, specifically around audio gen, video gen, images, everything in the gen media space. Not that much about Sam Altman and Elon Musk drama. But stay away from that stuff. Listen to other podcasts to hear more about that. But we talk about
although we get into some technical drama. I do have some technical drama news we'll share, but
totally. We're just trying to be like, if this is your first time listening, we're trying to be a podcast that focus specifically around the really cool creative aspects of AI and less so about benchmarks and all that stuff. We'll talk about it, but primary focus is on the images, media, video, audio, all of that, music, all that good stuff. I did some cool stuff last night. I was playing around with like Claude Code and things, and won't dive into it that much. But I thought before we jump into the video stuff, it was just really cool to share. If you don't know, Claude Code is like this coding agent based on Claude, and it just also is a really great general purpose agent. And so I installed it outside of a repo, and I gave it some tools like image generators, access to our blog, and it does such a great job. Claude Code, like what it does well, is doing long, extended tasks without human intervention. And unlike ChatGPT or Claude Desktop or Raycast, which I like Raycast a lot too, it's more of a question-answer response type of format. But Claude Code is just really, hey, we'll do something for 10 minutes. We'll fix ourselves. We'll write code. And what I found is really powerful is I was looking at our blogs, and I took all this data from Google Search Console in a CSV format. I took all this data from Ahrefs, which we use for like SEO monitoring. And then I have access to our blog as well. And I was letting Claude write a program that kind of took all that data and analyzed like, oh, what are our low-hanging fruits? Like where can we improve some of the blog articles? And it was writing programs to do this analysis, running those programs, suggesting things, actually updating our blogs. And it was just really cool because I could just give it a task and it'll go off and do something, use the tools that it has access to, write a tool on demand to do something, generate images for the blog articles. And that was really cool. So I thought that was something that if you haven't tried, you should try it out.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, and is it like, can you store that once it goes to a flow, can you store that procedure basically so you can just do it again, or do you have to every time go first from scratch and give it the tools again and everything?
I'm figuring that out right now. So the cool thing that Claude Code did recently was subagents, and it was pretty much you have Claude Code and you ask it to do something, but you could also build subagents. Like I wrote a writer subagent, and at a high level, I was always kind of skeptical of this like idea of like background agents, subagents, because like, why do you need them? Why don't you just like, you have the context of in Claude, just give rights, just let the main guy do it, you know? But I was creating this blog writer subagent that had access to specific tools, and I gave a description like, hey, you are an expert, helpful blog article writer. You have access to kind of these tools. I give it some context around what JellyPod is or just like how to write good articles. And so when the main agent, when I just chat with my main agent, like just normally say, hey, can you write some blog articles to me? It will delegate that task over to the subagent. It'll write the articles. That subagent will go off and the context will be contained in that subagent. And so essentially that subagent will go off, do all of this, like it'll write, it'll iterate, it'll use the tools, and then the main agent will only get that output. And so you don't have to necessarily pollute your main agent's context window with all of this unnecessary sort of tool calls and things. So that was pretty cool. But I don't know necessarily yet if maybe you could just say, hey, like based on everything that you just did and everything that worked and didn't work, just create a function that will
Yeah,
do
I
that
was like,
exact same
that's my
thing
question.
correctly.
Like, why, how do you contrast it with just having a function with a prompt, like that just says that, in the context instead of having a sub agent? Like, what is it? The flex, the judgment, like the fuzziness that the sub agent gives you. Like, but if you have a well-defined task, I guess why isn't it just a function versus?
I think it's like what I'm finding. What I'll see is like the first few iterations are fuzzy. You don't know necessarily what you
Mm,
want. Is this something that you'll do multiple times? And then if it is like writing a blog article that, hey, this is the exact schema you need, this is the exact tool you need to call, this is the exact API that you need to call to generate the blog cover art, it probably could just be like, hey, okay, now I'm doing this a bunch, create a tool that's
mm,
just create and publish blog post. And it just is like more of a procedural write code that does this correctly, knowing everything now that you know, and adding that to like your tool arsenal.
no, that's
So
so cool. It's basically like a human. You go through a task and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna make documentation on the steps I took, and so you're basically kind of doing that with the sub agent, figuring the requirements out, and then buttoning them up, making that into like a function, with hardcode rules, and you can always iterate, going back to that flow. So
totally.
it's pretty cool, interesting. I think that is that way because the API calls are always going to be more efficient than running. I feel like LLMs, like long
Hmm.
running, but maybe so that's maybe the hybrid where the LLM is the first pass, and then once you button it up, you just make it a regular macro or whatever.
Totally. Totally.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's super cool. The powerful thing is just like, can you do a task with a high level description and let it fix itself,
Hmm,
understand the errors, and then just like when I was asking it to write a blog post, it kept screwing some stuff up, and then it eventually got down to the right thing, and it wrote the blog post correctly based on the
nice.
schema. And
And you said Claude Code, so this is all happening in the terminal for you. So
mhm.
it's outputting the blog. You're kind of like going through the terminal, and reading it and stuff, and you're praying yes, no, etc.
Yeah, I'm kind of like just more so it's running in the terminal, but it has, so I built like a small repo of just configuration. So the Claude Code has access to, that's where you define the MCP tools and MCP servers, and the sub agents are defined there. So it's just like a basic repo of just configuration. And I'll publish this so everybody at JellyPod will be able to have the same configuration because it has access to linear for project management, has access to replicate as an MCP, it has access to our blog, and it's running in the terminal, but it's not like outputting the blog article for me to review right there. It's just because I just didn't ask it to. It's adding it as a draft to our CMS. So
Mm, nice, nice.
it's
No, I
cool.
love it. I love these kind of workflows. That's super, super powerful.
It just makes me feel lazy sometimes, but I like being lazy. I mean,
That's the
there's this
point. Like,
awesome,
we're
yeah,
supposed to automate our jobs.
right. There's like a Bill Gates quote from when he was in his early 20s about Microsoft. It's like, I will hire the laziest guy to get the job done
Right.
every single day, and because he's going to find the most efficient way to do it.
Right. Yeah.
So
No,
it's
for
great.
sure. 100%. That's awesome. Yeah. I gotta get into Cloud Code myself. It's been on my radar, and I'm like just getting through Windsurf. I had Windsurf and I canceled the plan. So now I'm down to Cursor, and I have Cloud Code, after that I'm going to use next week. Because Cursor this is the tech drama. So they did kind of rug their users because I mean, I don't know if it's rug because they were just subsidizing, I feel like, the request so much. But it was 500 requests and now it's API based. And basically, at least for what I found, like you go through the $20 in basically a few days. Maybe instead of like a month, it'll last you maybe a week. Even like sometimes for some people, it's like the first day because it's of the heavy use. That's going to be interesting how, if you compare the API users there versus Claude Code, which is Claude Code Max is $200. And then for a rate limit, but you do basically get a lot more, usage. So I feel like we're going to see a lot of people moving over to Claude Code because of this, so I think
Totally.
that's an existential crisis for Cursor unless they get their pricing right. And I think the problem they have is they're beholden on Anthropic, and Anthropic is the one leading lab that refuses to decrease their prices. Every other lab is decreasing their prices still. Anthropic is just like sticking because they understand that they're basically the code kings. And even GPT-5 does not touch Opus and Sonnet. And I'll get to GPT-5 in a second. There's an interesting twist there. And unless Gemini is like the only other player, I feel like, that has hope. And well, actually, I guess the Chinese model, DeepSeek, etc. do, but Claude has figured out taste at least. And I feel like unless other models can replicate that, they have that moat. But yeah, so I do hope they get competition because, it's great for us consumers. When there's more competition, prices get lower. But right now, Anthropic is kind of king.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really am curious on how Cursor will be a year from now. Like Cursor's not an old company. It grew extremely quickly, but I haven't thought about it much. So just take this opinion with a grain of salt. But the incentives will always be different between a model lab and Cursor because Cursor's trying to maximize profits, so they have to minimize token usage. So because they're calling APIs. And a model lab, they don't have to like they want to maximize token usage. And so the more tokens you spend hitting Anthropic's APIs or OpenAI, it's better for them. They want it's more aligned incentives because
Right.
more
Well, I think
tokens
that's
equals more
true long
thinking.
term. I feel like short term, actually, they are aligned because right now there's this huge demand and they just don't have enough supply that actually they would rather you use them less because they are very supply constrained. Like OpenAI literally came out with a whole like plan. They're like, this is our first priority will be our plus users, then the free users, then the API users. So I was like, what the fuck?
Mm.
Which is basically makes sense because they're basically a consumer product company. I mean, I don't know why people don't recognize this. They're less, I mean, they're a leading lab as well, but that's not their thing. Their thing is being the number one consumer product AI company, and that's their moat. They have the highest amounts of MAUs or something, and no one's close to that. And so they're prioritizing ChatGPT, which makes us like people like us who use the API. I feel like, yeah, we're like not second class citizens, and we should recognize that. And so for now, I think that's where the leading labs and the application layer Cursor are aligned. But I agree with you, that's eventually going to diverge. But speaking of OpenAI, it's an interesting tech drama that happened this week. They launched GPT-5, and it was supposedly really good. Like they were hyping it up. They always hype it up. But it felt like for a hot minute that, wow, they're finally talking the talk as well. They're walking the walk as well because the model was supposedly really good. And I tested it the first couple of days. It was actually the first OpenAI model that I felt was good at coding in 18 months. Like I haven't been impressed in like a good 18 months from them, and I've not really used them. But 5 felt good. But then something interesting happened. The model got nerfed at some point or something, and it
Really?
got progressively worse. And there was this whole like, I don't know if you follow Theo, he's a YouTuber. He's a pretty famous YouTuber in the tech circles, and he was one of the first like guys who OpenAI invited to their demo. He's in their hype video GPT-5, and he's like, "Oh my god, this model blows every other model of the world." Blah blah blah. And then he literally today comes out with another video that says GPT-5 sucks, and it's because they nerfed the model. And I wonder what happened was because right now Windsurf and Cursor have a free usage right now on GPT-5 for the week, which is which maybe made them didn't maybe they didn't anticipate the demand or something, and they silently nerfed the model underneath, and they're using a lower model because they also came out with this other update called Auto Router, which is used in ChatGPT, which basically is the I think going to become a very crucial part of GPT-5 and beyond systems, where what it does is it automatically takes the query and it routes it to, okay, does this require the highest quality model or does this require a lower quality model? And right now I think it's focusing on the lower quality model. It goes to the supply constraint because you would think if in a world where they had as many GPUs as possible, they would want you to use the highest quality model because it's it requires the most amount of money to use, so better margins for them. But right now they would rather not. They want you to use mini or nano, etc., because
Interesting.
they're compute constrained. So
Hmm.
so I think that's what happened right now. It's an interesting drama, and there's a fallout from that. We'll see what happens with GPT-5. I hope they give us like the model that was promised, and it gets better.
Right.
So we'll see.
No, that's interesting. I haven't played around with it that much. I know you're doing a lot of latency testing too to see like how fast it is, but
Yeah, it's super slow right now, and it's partly because of the reasoning trace they do. Even on the Nano and Mini, there's always a reasoning. They have this new field called the effort reasoning effort, and you can do low, medium, high. But then there's a special setting called minimal, and the whole thing about minimal is that's basically if you wanted something like 4.0 where there's no reasoning, so it just does the minimum amount and bypasses it. But even there, I found a good few seconds are spent on the reasoning step, and I just hope that they just give us a non-reasoning one, which is just completely, you know, goes past that. Because right now, based on my testing, I can't use Nano and Mini because I can't use Nano for sure. Because Mini, okay, yeah, maybe there's some quality trade-off. With Nano, you absolutely want something like almost like an API. You want something immediately, quickly. You know,
Mhm.
that's the use of Nano, and I'm just
Right.
not seeing it. So I hope they
Yeah.
figure it out because the pricing is very enticing. You know, they cut a lot of the pricing with caching, especially. It's ridiculous. You know, I would love to use Nano and Mini. We would love to use it in our products as
Right.
well. So, yeah, hopefully they'll
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah.
But other models too. I mean, there's apparently a new model called Horizon on the which is better than Opus in terms of front end.
Oh, you think this is Anthropic model or
Yeah,
something?
I don't
Oh,
know
okay.
which model is. It could be Google or something, but that's like some of the testing. Like I haven't tested it, but apparently the design is like this is the first model that's giving Anthropic a run for its money. That's what I meant by taste. I mean, we need other labs to be catching up on taste, and Casonet, Anthropic has had the monopoly since 3.5, and I hope somebody catches up because somehow nobody's been able to figure out that just really nice, tasteful front end design that Opus and Sonnet do.
Right. Right. No, totally. It'll be interesting. Like if Anthropic just decides to be the coding, like I strongly believe that the role of software engineer that existed 5 years ago will not exist 5 years from now. It's going to be much more product engineer kind of,
Right,
and it's like you're not writing software, but you have to be able to recognize like certain things. Like I use Claude Code, I use Opus 4.1. It's great, but there's still things where it will go down these rabbit holes and it'll just make design decisions, architectural, like software decisions,
right,
not like UI decisions, but
right,
like I just have to be like, wait. Smells off about that code.
right.
And I'm like, is that really the right way to do it? And then sometimes they'll say yes. And then I have to go out and research, like, something smells about that code.
Mm,
And I figure out that, oh, no. This is what you need to do. And then once I give it to Opus, it actually writes good code. But what makes software engineering hard is kind of having that expertise, having the exposure in the past of like good practices and knowing when to use it. Because, like, when you're an entry level engineer, when you're using a new library or whatever, you're just going to make mistakes and just do things that aren't the best just because you've never played around with it. And as time comes on, you learn and you have to go in and fix a bug. And when you're fixing that bug, you recognize, like, why was I writing all this weird logic when I could just make this one API call? And that sort of iterative process is what's the difference between like a senior engineer and a junior engineer? It's that iteration and exposure.
yeah, no, you're
And
so right. It's just like there's something because the other thing is like as software engineer, like we're humans, we're lazy. My goal, if I want a task, my one of my objective functions is how can I write the least amount of code possible
right,
to meet this requirement, right? And I feel like it's kind of the opposite almost with the RL trained models because they're like, oh, how can I do more? You know, it just keeps doing. And I don't know if you've probably seen it on the agent. It'll do the first edit, it actually does it, and then it just keeps going. And I almost want to stop. Oftentimes I'm like, just dude, you did it. Just stop, please stop. Like, like you make the one line code change, and then you're like, oh, let me make a test file. I'm like, no. I just wanted the one line change. Just stop.
right.
It's very annoying. And so you're right. It almost like feel like that should be part of the objective function. Like yesterday I was doing this migration, in our Jellypod code base, and all it needed was this one line code change, and it needed to just go, and it's just because that field wasn't supported anymore. It just recreated the whole field, and I just spent so much time, and ultimately I had to dig in the docs and finally found, oh, they just renamed the field. It's a
Right.
one line code change. Took me, it's just like,
Was that the experimental transform or something?
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
God, I spent so many hours on that kind of like embarrassing. It's like, but so that it's a classic. It's the new, when you spend hours down one rabbit hole and you finally fix it, it's a simple change. Now it's happening with the LLMs. It just goes down the rabbit hole and you have to like resist, like, oh, just fix it. Okay, fine. I'll actually have to do something now. Now I have to go down the rabbit hole with it.
So, yeah. Yeah. I find it very satisfying too. It's like finding the balance between, okay, first step is like have the AI write the code. It writes the code pretty bad or good, somewhere in between good and bad. And then recognize coming back to that same code later down the line and actually like cleaning some stuff up. It's like spring cleaning your apartment. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, look at this. Like, either like the new AI can go back and fix the old AI stuff, or I can come in and I just like rewrite some of the things because now I can just see the code differently. And if, for anybody that's watching this that's not necessarily a programmer or I've never programmed, you can just like when you feel something when you look at art or when you watch a movie, it
Right.
evokes emotion. It's the same
Right.
thing with and writing too. Like when you read something, like there's this subtle sort of emotional, like it's not about what it says, it's like how it made it, like how did your eyes glaze across the page? Was it sharp? Were the sentence how was the sentence structured? Like good writing is so much more than about just like the words it says. It's like how those words are put together. And it's the same in code. And
Hmm.
it's like going through code and cleaning stuff up and tightening up things, and it's the same satisfaction good coding as good writing and reading that too, and it's an interesting feeling. It's cool. I
No,
like it.
I 100% agree. And I feel like that's like what you mentioned, the role is basically like design thinking, almost like from architecture point. I feel like that is the last, part of the software engineering, the most important one, and which, we'll be doing still, I think. It'll be interesting
Totally.
to see once the models, if they ever do, I think it's a when, not an if, but if they get to the point where they can basically do that themselves, and there must be some sort of threshold where they basically are at human level or superhuman level coder ability. And from there, it'll be interesting. Like basically, maybe we get to a point where every time the model upgrade, it goes back and just refactors the code base on its own, and it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited for that self improvement. And then it also there's like the unknown question too, because yes, there is the engineering side of programming, which is very objective and like there's a better way to do things. But there's also the non-objective, the more design and like trade-offs. Like a lot of engineering is in trade-offs. If you make a change over here, like upgrading GPT-5 for improved pricing, right now like there's a latency trade-off. Like it's going to be a little bit slower. And then on product decision, do you like expose all this custom, like this is a question we always talk about, is
Mm,
do we expose knobs and dials inside JellyPod to give more features for the power users? But if you do that for power users, it's going to make it more complicated for entry
mm,
level users. And so it's like those things where there isn't a right or wrong
right.
choice. And it's like,
Yeah.
what do you want your product to
Yeah.
be?
Hey,
And
maybe when
so, yeah,
software is so cheap, we just make multiple versions of Jellypod. I
right.
was actually, I think I was tweeting about this. Like, I think Guillermo starts it. And I'm like, if you think about it, we have light mode and dark mode. That's like, a version that is pretty popular. That happened because, a certain population just loves dark. Big dark mode fan, but there are certain sites do like dark mode, and like Twitter actually. I always use the dim mode. I hate the light mode on that one. But that's like a standard variation people make. There are other ones, and I wonder, like, maybe we'll just have 5 to 10, maybe 20, 100 types of variations. Maybe there'll be a dense, compact, like Bloomberg style version of a site. Because I am on the spectrum, there's this like whole concept of dynamic. Every site will look completely different because will be generated on demand for a user. I personally
Mm-hmm.
don't think that'll be the case because I just think that's less about technical ability and more about human psychology. I think most people don't want to think about how to display a browser or their website. They love drop down selection. So maybe instead of light dark mode, you will have like 510 minimal mode, retro mode, brutal mode, or something. And it'll be because light dark mode is just colors, but it could be a little more complicated. It could be the way the information is displayed or hidden, or Apple mode where it's everything is clicked and optimized, or having more buttons. So
Or
I
glass you
actually
see
think
through.
that'll be a thing where the top sites at least have the engineering resources and the LLM resources to just have 20 different variations of their site.
Right.
So it'll be interesting.
Totally. I totally agree. And yeah, it goes down that whole rabbit hole of A/B and testing, generative UI. I completely agree with you on that aspect. I think there's product decision and taste that goes into a UI. Imagine you're somebody is struggling with like interacting with a web page, and the guy who wrote the YouTube video is just like the page looks completely different when you're like
Hmm.
going for help. It's like, well, like that's not what it looks like for me. And so like, what do you mean? And so
Right.
like, there's all those interesting
Oh yeah, the surface area
questions.
complexity of definitely increases for sure.
Can
That's how it
you
is.
send me a screenshot of the UI you're seeing, because on our code, I see something completely different. I don't know, like, what do you mean the button's not there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the thing. I remember one of the coolest side projects I remember. This guy, like, he built this on a weekend, solo dev. It completely blew up. I think I don't want to say, but he was making a good. I think he makes his living off it. But it was like a few years ago, and he was having this problem. So what he did was he literally just took the Chrome. You know, on Chrome, like you can do select iPhone XR 12 Pro. You
Hmm.
can see how the screen looks on different. And he was like, you know, it's annoying. I have to toggle. What if I can just see all the screens at once? So I can see this is 16 by 900. I can see and he basically just built a wrapper that lets you do it. And it blew up completely. And I was like, ah, that's actually a cool product idea. Because, yeah, you know, you can, like, as you're building the code, you can see the exact changes on 9 different screens. And you're like, oh, that broke mobile right here. And I
Right.
can just fix that. I was like, oh,
Totally.
great idea.
I wonder if
So, all
people
the
are
simple
doing that.
hacks. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, because I see like nowadays a lot of people are using Playwright to kind of just do some like basic integration tests and like LLM powered integration tests, kind of like walking through those main flows of the user journey. And if you do it just on desktop, I mean, do it on mobile, do it on tablet, do it on every browser, and just run like a bunch of tests in parallel on every
Right.
code change, where it's like, oh no, this broke on mobile. The button now is cut off. I can't click it, or I have to scroll over to click it, or something. Yeah, just
Yeah.
cool.
No, for sure. That's awesome. But I
That's
know you said
yeah.
at the start this is a
Let's talk.
generative AI podcast. And so maybe
We
we
get
should
down to this
talk a
all the
little bit.
time. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about movies, Hollywood. Let's talk about all these different talking head avatars.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, before
yeah,
that,
let's
I
do it.
think just continuing from last episode, I think I want to touch on video generation because I do think there's a huge critical moment right now going on, which is basically the cost and quality you can get for generating a 5-second video has just now finally hit a threshold, I think, where you can truly do amazing stuff with it. Like it's what is it? Like 10 cents, 15 cents a video now, which is insane. It used to be $1, $2, but one released a model which is open source, follow and replicate, hosted. It's a 1 2.2 version, and it's really kind of good and very cheap. Like sometimes like 5 cents a video, like for a 480p resolution, which is insane. Like you think about it, that's basically an image level pricing. Then you have other models now coming out too, which are basically at that level too. I'm video generation models, and I'm sure Kling's next version will be even better, and hopefully they'll have a fast version as well. Just really exciting times in the video sphere, you know, of generative AI. You know, I would definitely play around with these tools, create videos and stuff, and you know, try to come up with cool, whatever ideas you have in your head, like try to put
Right.
them out there.
What are you creating? I'm curious. Like, is there anything that like really excites you about like some certain genre of creation, or like when price goes down? Like, is there something that you're really excited
For
about, or
me,
what you're doing
yeah, for
today?
me, the biggest thing, oh, maybe I should like demo it. Like I have this like UI for this, but I'm really excited for like longer form, consistent character stories because the hard part about the 5-second videos is you do one and then the next 5-second generation could look very different. You know, you can control it by having this same art aesthetic part of the prompt, but still like janky. Now there are ways around it. Like you can use consistent character, and so you can use something like context, or there's like new model like cdance edit now, ByteDance edit, etc. That will let you take an image and create from the same character a different bunch of images. So a lot of people do is they'll create the images and then use that as the first frame of the video. So then you can generate a consistent character story. And so I've kind of put that flow into practice and it kind of works. But, it's still like hacky, right? Because sometimes what if you want like a 5-second video that doesn't have the main character in it? It's like more of a b-roll almost, like, because you want a story, immersive story. So it's not like the character is always in focus. Sometimes the character comes in focus on second 2 or 3, and you start off with a different image. So that
Mm,
defeats the image to prompt. Now there's other flows like reference to video, which is like Runway did it, which I think is interesting, which will let you upload the image character, but that doesn't mean that's a starting frame. It just means it'll be the central figure in the 5-second video generated. And I actually think reference to video, reference to image is more powerful than image to video, image to like, starting frame, because that means it doesn't have to start with that. It just needs to include that. So
interesting.
it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. Like we'll definitely get cheaper and higher quality and better resemblance. I think the bigger limit, at least in the next few months to maybe a couple of years, is the 5-second output generation. Because ideally, you just press a button and you get 2 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute long videos. That I don't foresee that happening anytime soon because it's a ridiculous amount of compute required. So in the meantime, it'll be like, how do you hack together consistent storyline? And hopefully we can do it with these image to video and reference to video like hacks, and it gets better.
Right. No, it's super interesting. Like the reason why, so the challenges around the image to video is that if you want to have some character in later frames of that video, it's just that there's no way to do that besides like Runway's new model, because if you show the image, it'll just be that would be the starting frame. Why couldn't you just clip up?
Well, so I want to add one other
thing.
cool thing that only one model has, as far as I know, which is Min-Max Helio 2. They have something called multi-shot. So what it does is, for most 5-second videos, if this is a starting frame, it'll just be this and it'll add some stuff, but it'll be this essential frame. In multi-shot, I can add this and I can add in the prompt that, seconds 0 to 02, it's him talking, and then second 3, it's him flying in the sky. And so that's one way to kind of shift the frame of the character. And I think multi-shot is going to be a huge player in this flow as well. So
interesting. No, that's interesting. I saw something about like Google VO3. I wonder, do you know if other models have this same emerging capability where they're like drawing? I don't know how you actually do this, because I thought VO3 was just like you give a prompt, but you draw on the screen like, hey, there's a forest, and then you say, and there's a grizzly bear, and then you like draw an arrow from the grizzly bear from the left to right, and it'll move.
Yeah. They only have that in their Flow app, I guess, right? Yeah, it's super cool. I call that basically that kind of workflow director mode. I think that Runway has something like that, where you can have super granular control over the image. And I think, that's another really cool way to have more control and generate precise video outputs.
And I remember like a while ago when like really like maybe I'm probably wrong here, because it's obviously like VO1 and these older video gen models, but at least the first video model that I ever saw that was actually pretty solid was Runway, because they had this like in painting feature, whereas if you take just a image, just say a static image of the ocean, you can kind of paint on an area, and it was kind of had that motion. It was like a motion brush. And I remember that was pretty cool, because you could take an image and just, you want the leaves to rustle, you just draw around those leaves, and it gave motion to the leaves, and that was pretty cool. So it reminds me of
Runway
that.
is like definitely, their audience is like semi-professionals, professional, like actors who want granular level control. Sort of like, for us at Jellypod, we give you granular level control for podcasts. That's for them, it's video. And, their releases kind of cater to that. So their latest one is Runway Aleph, which is very interesting. It's a basically video style transfer, but very precise. So I can literally give this video and be like, instead of the hat, like, have a beanie like on my head, and it'll do that, and it'll do it very precisely. I tried around with more complex movement, and that's where it breaks. But for like more still videos and stuff, it's really good. Ray to Modify also is like another competitor, which is similar. But I know I personally am waiting for. I have these 80s. What I want to do is I have these 80s cartoons and stuff that I want to make live action out of. I actually think it'll be pretty fire. So I'm waiting for that to happen. It unfortunately, anime to photorealism hasn't quite worked for me.
Photorealism to anime kind of is working a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's a more popular one. You create an anime version or a Ghibli version, but I think nobody thinks on the other side of it. Because what if you take Thundercats and make a live action movie out of it? Or something like that.
Totally. I mean, and then like also, I don't know if this is actually Nickelodeon or whatever, but like Avatar: The Last Airbender, they've made like 2, I think now, versions, like real life versions, which both kind of flopped. Like the animated anime, it's not even anime really, I don't know. But it's like the animated version of that show is great. And then when they made the live action, it's just like everybody doesn't like it.
I think what will be super interesting with animated photorealism is, if you think about it, like the anime, you can get away with so many ridiculous, like, you can't have Dragon Ball Z photorealistic like the way it is, because how are you going to show like a planet being destroyed? Like, I mean, or you can, but it'll take the budget for that. Like actually having a good way to show that is insane. But for anime, it's just drawings, right? Oh yeah, Goku has a spirit bomb, he throws it, just the whole planet blows up, whatever. Well, he doesn't blow up the planet, obviously the villains does, but whatever. My point is, with anime to photorealism, you all you have to do is kind of style transfer, and you have these ridiculous effects. So I actually think when we hit a threshold, you're going to see some insane footage go viral on social media, which is be like, oh my god, like how this would have cost like $1 billion,
Totally.
like just like Lord of the Rings level kind of like effects. So it'll be super interesting.
I listened to a podcast and I forget now who was on. I want to say it was somebody from Lucasfilm or somebody that's worked with Lucasfilm in the past, but they were just talking about like what is actually the workflow today that Hollywood goes through when producing CGI. And just to break it down very simply, it's like, hey, the director and or whoever, they want to have a scene that, let's just talk about the Death Star explosion scene because everyone kind of knows that, we want, okay, we have the Death Star and we want like a laser, let's say the laser and destroying Alderaan, and it explodes a planet like this, right? And what happens is that like you describe this, you go to the visual designers, they kind of mock it up, and they create these like basic 1 to 3 versions of what that scene's going to look like without all the lighting and everything perfect. But like, hey, which one of these 3 do you like? They took us 2 months to do, and like they're basic. So like choose option 3, and that's all you have. There isn't this ability to quickly and cheaply iterate. Like, no, honestly, I want it completely different. And it just balloons your costs because like, okay, go back to the drawing board, there's rendering time, there's like actual design time, and it's very expensive. But in a world of AI, it's like you could have 50 different variations that could be created in an afternoon based on the feedback, and you can actually have higher quality footage and video being
Right,
created with the same people that were going to do it. They're just going to be able to create more
right.
and more quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely 100%. I mean, it blows my mind. Like, I mean, I respect it too, but like, it's some scenes take up to a year sometimes of planning and stuff for like a 5-10 second scene, and I'm
Right.
like, what? How does anyone actually? How did they ever convince? Like, okay, we're gonna spend a $50 million for this 10-second sequence, but
Totally.
it happens. It's crazy. I mean, and it's awesome that it happens, but now, like, you can do that, like you said, in a very a fraction of the cost with the iterative feedback loop. And even then, if you mess it up, you can go back in post processing, and now you can, I mean, it's not like it doesn't happen. There's a lot of magic that happens after you've post processing. From what I've heard, is like 70% of the thing, the editing now, because they'll just do everything green screen and then they'll add it. But now with, you can do a lot more with AI. I think, if like there was a mess up or whatever, there was a, coffee cup or whatever was left over in the scene or something, you can, like, instead of like manually going through frame by frame, you can just like have it wiped, in
No,
like a few seconds.
it makes the whole movie industry competitive again because I want to go see Fantastic Four. It's the whatever, the fifth whatever reboot with like Pedro Pascal and everybody. I'm a Marvel fan too, or at least I was until like Endgame, and then all this stuff after that just kind of sucked.
Yeah, it's kind of
But
fallen off.
I'll go see this. And the budget of the movie was huge. The box office was also huge. But to make any sort of meaningful return, like percentage wise, on that investment, if you have a budget of $250 million, I don't know what it was for Fantastic Four, but like you have to have a killer box office release
Right.
because streaming now, you're not making money on streaming because it's going to go to Disney Plus and it's just a completely different financial model over on streaming. And it finally is going to make competitive studios that are small that you could have box offices with budgets of movies in the $1 to $10 million range, which is going to be
Hmm.
awesome because you could have a $10 million budget and you can have a movie that has a box office of $25 million, and that's going to be an awesome return because that same return would take it'd be like $1 billion, if you had like a $250 million budget, and it's going to make smaller teams more competitive. And then something also it's like we're not talking about is audiences, global audiences. I think one of the first big global phenomenon in a long time was Squid Game. And when Squid Game came out, it took the world by storm. It was a Korean film. Americans don't like subtitles or dubbed
Hmm.
at all. And because everything's English and it's American English usually.
Right.
Other overseas will dub it into like, those native languages and they're more familiar with it. But for the American audience to have a Korean film get like or Korean show be the number one talked about show is really awesome, but it still wasn't great. Like the voices were okay. The lip syncing dubbing was like bad. We're going to have universal movies. We're going to have there's going to be the actor who's going to be the same, but the lips are going to be perfect. He's going to be able to speak every language. You can localize the films a little bit better. Like, for example, in the UK, a driver drives in the left-hand side of the street. In the United States, it's right-hand side of the street. And so those types of subtleties, which just would be like completely out of the picture. Like, you're not going to reshoot a scene because the drivers for the UK audience should be on the left, and for most of the world, it should be on the right. But,
Right.
those small details, which were formerly prohibitively expensive, you could do in the post-processing. Hey, just put them on the right-hand side, but in AI, just like move it over to the left and kind of just flip
That's
these
so interesting.
small
I didn't even think
localization
about that, but that's so cool.
things.
That's like localization of content. You can just
Right,
like, it's like right now all we do is maybe dubbing. So you have a Spanish dub, but
right.
what if like it's almost like a Spanish culture? Culturally, this joke is sensitive there or something, or actually the way, the character, if he's a romantic, this is how he expresses himself in this culture versus he's a bit more reserved, in this one. So you can like tweak
Totally.
that. That's a very fascinating concept,
Yeah.
having those
And
drafts.
even like logos, because, product placement is a big thing in movies. And
Yeah, that's true.
it's like this one tea brand might be better, or one soda brand is better in these markets than the other ones. And
Oh
you
my
don't have to
God.
refilm,
I can totally see like you can have the James Bond, like the clip changes, or and they can buy ad spots live. Oh yeah, for the next 20,000 streams, if you pay this much money, we're gonna insert your ad in this particular scene. Oh my God.
Totally. Yeah, you're watching Netflix, and the product that's placed there is different. Yeah, that's
That's actually a
interesting.
very fascinating point. I didn't think about it, but everyone hates ads. It's like a universal thing. But people, we've talked about, there's this concept of native ads in social media, which is it'll look like a Facebook post or Instagram post, but it's actually an ad. And that's called a native ad because it's basically organic, quote unquote, right? Influencer shout outs, kind of similar. What if the whole like, oh, you're watching a show and then suddenly there's a 30-second ad break. Instead of that, the ad is actually well placed in the content itself. So you don't feel it's an ad, but it's an ad, and it doesn't disrupt you in your flow, but you still got like, oh, the character drank some Coca-Cola. So you got the Coca-Cola ad, but you didn't have to search to, stop the scene or skip over it. So I actually
I
think that's
completely
very
agree with you.
powerful. Yeah.
And I think we talked about this on one of the old episodes. I'm very, very bullish on Meta, and Google too, because they also have YouTube. But Meta, for example, over the last few years, there's this explosion of UGC content, and where you hire some influencer to promote your company, and you run ads with that content, and so it looks kind of like a real post that somebody would be talking about some product or whatever. And in Meta's world, like it will be possible just to generate unique influencers that are specific to everybody. Like, let's say I really like this type of person, like I resonate, like I look similar to, maybe it's another white dude with blue eyes and something that's from San Francisco, and the ad that I see for the same product is going to be like in San Francisco. It's going to look similar to me because they have all my data, everything. And then for you, it'll be a slightly different. And for other people around the world, it's promoting the same product, but depending on who is the viewer, the ad's going to look different, and it's going to be generated on demand. And I could see that rather than like generative UI, generative ads, where it's just like you could really highly optimize and
Yes.
hyper localize ads. Same with
Oh, yeah.
product placement too.
It's happening. Yeah. Maybe we'll, take some of that and add in. I know in Jellypod, like people have wanted to add ads, in their
Right.
podcasts and stuff. There's probably some interesting ways we can do that for you guys. So we'll see.
Totally. Totally. Well, I know. And now we still have these battle of talking heads and things that we didn't get to, and editing images, but nano banana model, context, ideogram character, ByteDance seed edit, right? And Staggle,
Yeah. I
OmniHuman,
wonder if we like
Kika,
take that
Hedro.
for the next episode
Yeah,
because
let's
I
kick
guess
it
we're
down
over.
down the
But
road.
it's a teaser. We'll talk about image editing. A lot of cool stuff happening there. Hopefully next week.
A lot
So
of cool stuff.
you
And sometimes it kind of slows down too. So, a lot of these things, like some models are new, some model, it's just like they exist. And whether it's today we talk about them or next week, it's still cutting edge. And it's kind of nice that feels like a little bit slower pace, which is nice right now, and not everything, but that's just how I feel. I
I
don't know.
mean, it's like slowly then quickly. I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff happening under the
Right.
surface. Sometimes, it takes a while too. A model is out there and you're like, oh, but then somebody uses it in a very interesting way and you're like, oh, wow, I couldn't believe you could do it. So I feel like there's always stuff. And actually, I'm I'm going to make a prediction. I feel like Gemini 3, when it comes out, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, it will blow GPT-5 out of the water. We'll see. But I actually
Right.
think I'm very excited for that. And
Let's see the poly
hopefully,
market.
on the generative AI front, they actually package that up with some VO3 or Imagen updates. Imagen 4, I mean, we're probably not, but that would be interesting.
Right. Totally. Totally. Well, episode 9, Creative Flux. What a good one, as always.
Yeah,
So,
as always, going down random
yeah,
deep holes,
MD
we
holes. Yeah.
try to keep it
Okay.
loose and
Yeah, basically, we have 5 bullet points, so we talked about everything. Half the stuff wasn't on there, but it's great. Cool. So we'll talk next week.
yeah,
See you later.
awesome. All right. Bye, guys.